Thanks, Emma. Yeah, hi everyone, and welcome to the latest Contensis webinar. So yeah, accessibility in practice, and I'll be looking at the card component today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jon Maskrey. I'm a UX engineer at Zengenti, and I work in the CXM squad, so doing stuff like creating content, documentation, and putting together code examples. But also still work in the product development team as well, so on the front end of Contensis. So yeah, let's jump in and have a look at what we're going to be talking about today. So we'll have a look at yeah, what a card is, what parts it's made up of, and then take a look at the common accessibility issues that they can have. Even though they're a relatively simple component and they don't have an awful lot in the way of interaction usually it's just you click on them, they can still have some problems, and we can still definitely code them in a way that makes it easier for example, screen reader users to actually deal with. So yeah, we'll have a look at the techniques and have a look at how we can make it as accessible as possible, basically. And just to add on the extra bit of pressure, I'm going to be doing a live coding demo of the changes, and so we can see in kind of real time how we can improve things. I'll be doing it with web components and lit. I'll try to make it as close to sort of basic HTML as possible. So that's web components, and lit is just a little library on top of that, which will helps me out with the sort of templating and does reactivity and stuff. But you'll see in a bit, it looks fairly straightforward. Okay, so what are cards and what are they typically made up of? You've probably seen them everywhere. They're a great way of displaying links to sort of like content like blog posts, articles, that sort of thing, but in a nice sort of rich, interesting way, with enticing images and more information on them. And they're generally clickable anywhere on the card, so you've got a nice big hit area to actually click through. Just to break them down a bit further, let's have a look at the different sort of parts that they're generally made out of. Yeah, there's usually some sorts of wrapping element. Well, I say usually, there always is. So you're going to have a wrapping element to hold it all together. And that sounds pretty boring, but it actually does have quite an impact on its accessibility. So we'll look at that in a bit more detail in a sec. Usually some sort of image. Again, we'll have a discussion about having an alt attribute with that or an empty one and so on. Usually have a title, bit of introductory text, and possibly a category, optionally a category tag or some sort of tag. And maybe even like an author, a bit of author details down there, or some sort of metadata like a published date. You get the idea, and that's the sort of general sort of elements that make up a card component. So let's have a look at some of the accessibility problems they can have. And the next bit of code that I'm going to go through is kind of I mean, not the actual worst thing you can do, but it's a good base to start from to show the problems we can have. So yeah, this is code you generally shouldn't use, but we'll go through whys. So here's that card again. Let's have a look first at how we've wrapped it. So in this case, we've wrapped it all in a link, basically in an anchor tag. So that's good in one way because it makes the whole card clickable, so the whole card is a link, and that's perfectly valid since HTML5. So there's no it's not a problem to do in HTML, but as we'll see later, that can give us some issues. We've got a bit of a span going on there with a class of card tag, and that's just to hold the blog tag text. An image, we've got an alt in there, some alt text like the React logo with particles being emitted. And then slightly, I don't might ring some alarm bells, but we've got a paragraph which has got the sort of card title in there. And we'll have a look at all of these in more detail, but it's not as clear cut as to what that should be. Yeah, it sounds like it should be a heading, and it probably is going to be a heading, but it's not necessarily guaranteed that that's the right thing to do. And yeah, intro paragraph, not much to say about that. And yeah, the author name at the bottom there. And yeah, we usually have a few cards, there can be quite a few, arranged in some sort of grid. And in this case, we've just wrapped it in a div with a class of card grid, and we'll have given it some CSS to sort of lay it out nicely in that sort of in that grid. So what's wrong with all of this? Yeah, it's nothing massive that stands out, but it's definitely something we can improve on. But let's first have a look at how VoiceOver, which is the Mac screen reader, deals with this, and the sort of things it speaks out. I'm using VoiceOver. I mean, I use a Mac, and it's the default screen reader on a Mac, so that's why I'm using it. There are definitely others available, and if you're ever testing, always test on the others. One of the most popular ones is JAWS, and then NVDA on a PC. So don't fall into that trap of just testing out VoiceOver, because they'll behave differently. Anyway, using VoiceOver, it's great for demos because weirdly for a screen reader, it actually shows you the text that it's reading out at the same time, but that's useful for us. Okay, let's get Safari up and going and hide the other bits. Okay, so yeah, we've just got a bit of HTML on the page here just to demonstrate a sort of pared back sort of a web page with the cards on there. And what I'll do is I'll hit Command F5 and we'll get VoiceOver open.
VoiceOver on Safari, the card component.
Just stop them from talking there. So as you can see, it's useful for us. It actually writes everything out that it reads. So I'm going to go and jump into this and just flick through the various elements until we hit the cards here. So let's do that and have a listen.
In the card component, web content, heading level 1, and Deep Root has joined the meeting.
There we go. We've found out that Zoom actually announced other things as well, which is great.
Tony Watkins.
Right, let's stop Zoom from doing that and jump back into here.
Safari, the card component.
There we go. Right. Behave yourself, VoiceOver. Okay, so we're on the H1 there. The next element I'm going to jump to is going to be one of the cards. So let's have a listen to what happens there.
Visited, link. Blog a close-up of a group of people adding sticky notes to a sheet of paper during a user experience exercise. Why content can't be an afterthought. Thought you could get away with tackling your content problem later. Jones has joined the meeting by Drew Denny. You are currently on a link inside web content. To click this link.
So that speaks a lot out for one link. And I don't know about you. I mean, I know there's someone joined halfway through that, but it's very hard to pick out that actually that link is just why content, the actual title of it is why content can't be an afterthought. It's kind of buried in with all this other stuff. And if I get at the rotor control for VoiceOver.
Headings menu, no items in links menu.
And jump to links. You can see there that there's the 3 links. And you can even actually see the text there. It's not actually displaying the why content can't be part, that part of the link. It's showing you the tag first because that's the first thing in there. Then it's reading out the alt text of the image that's in there. So a group, close-up group of people and so on. So I can't, as a screen reader user, hear very easily what that link is all about. So that's the first issue we've got here. Second one relates to the headings, actually. So if we go back to the headings listing.
Windows headings menu.
We've only got one heading on this page. So we've got an H1 that's blogs, which is that one on the top up here. So that's not really giving a screen reader user any other way to navigate around this page. So we know we can improve on that and put extra headings in there. So that's something else that'd be good to look at. And lastly, if I close that window,
visited link.
If I jump back to the blog title again.
Heading level 1, blogs.
Yeah, the next element I jump to, it doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't say there's a list there. It doesn't say there's 3 items. You don't get any information. You just jump straight into a link.
Visited link. Blog a close-up of a group of people adding sticky notes to a sheet of paper.
I'll stop there. You get the idea. So there's plenty we can do to improve on this. Let me turn
voiceover off.
Voiceover off. Jump back in to Keynote. So yeah, that was our first issue. So it's the example here. We've wrapped everything, all the content of that card in a link. In one way, that's good because it means you can click everywhere. But links get their accessible name from the content of the link. And you know, if normally you've got a link with just like 1 or 2 words maybe, and so it's quite obvious what it is and what it's all about, as long as you use the right text in there. But here there's a lot of content that's being read out. You can see here, you know, blog, React logo, particles, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot, and it's hard to pick out what it actually is linking to. Yeah, next up, the heading. We can make more use of this heading and make it more semantically, have more semantics basically. At the moment it's a paragraph, and that's not necessarily wrong, but we could make it better with a heading. The headings let screen reader users skim through the page, so much in the same way that we might just cast our eyes over it and skim through and see what's there. It allows a screen reader user to hear all the titles and get a rough idea of what the page is about without having to actually listen to every word. So doing that's going to help. Putting a heading there will help, but you may not want to do it in every case. It's going to depend on how much content you have in your card. In this case here, we've got quite a bit. You know, we've got the title, then we've got a paragraph, we've got some metadata, we've got an image, and we've got, you know, the category it's in. So that's probably enough to have it as its own little area, its own little section of content that's got its own title. If it was something like you had an image, the title, and maybe just the author name, you may think that's not probably enough to warrant a title for that section of content. And likewise, if you've got a page with, I don't know, 100 cards on, or a lot of cards and a lot of other titles for sections, you're actually making that harder for a screen reader user to actually skim through if everything on that page is basically a heading. So you're kind of diluting what, you know, their way of skimming things, or polluting, I should say, maybe. I don't know. So not straightforward, but in this case, I think it's on this example, it's definitely going to be helpful to make it a heading. And yeah, lastly, wrapping the card. So we've wrapped it in a div in this example, and that doesn't give any semantic meaning to a screen reader. So we can do better than that. We can make it a list and make the cards be wrapped in list items, and that will, you know, give a screen reader user a bit more information, and it will let them know there's 3 items here in a list, and they're on the second of 3. So we'll have a look at that as well. So yeah, they're not massive issues. They're relatively straightforward-ish to fix, but they do throw up a few considerations, and there are a few gotchas to look out for. So let's do some live coding, and yeah, hopefully this isn't where I forget how to type because people are watching me, but we'll see. Right, so let's get Visual Studio up. We want Safari, I'll stick it over there, and I've got some notes so we can all see what I'm talking about at the same time, and that will help remind me. Okay, so yeah, as I said before, for this demo, I tried to keep it as plain HTML as possible. So I'm using web components, which are browser native. They look pretty similar. I'm using lit as well to just as a bit of a templating thing for this rather than React or anything like that. And yeah, by using that, it means that I'm not putting weird like class name and other attributes and elements in here that I would do maybe if I used React or like Vue or something like that. Web components use custom elements. So the card component is basically going to be wrapped in this. It's a card component tag, which is a custom element, which is, yeah, all basic sort of browser native stuff. So you can see in here actually if I spec the element there. There we go. We've got, yeah, the card list and then the card component elements inside that. So what can we do? So the first thing we're going to look at is, yeah, the verbosity. So there was a lot of extra information being spoke out when we went onto these links. Most of that, to be honest, came from the alt text of the image. So one of the first things you could do, but may not want to, is have an empty alt tag for these. You can do that, and it's quite useful if you've got images that are purely for decoration. But again, I keep saying it's not that clear cut. Not all screen reader users are totally blind. You have some people who will use them and they're partially sighted and they can tell there's an image there and they may want a bit of simple alt text to help them understand what it is. Even if it's, you know, just for decoration, like this kind of thing. But we'll come back to that. We'll get rid of that to start with. So let's give it an empty alt attribute, and that's going to basically take the image away from the screen reader, so it won't read out there's an image there. Let's save that and
VoiceOver on Safari.
Bring VoiceOver up and have a listen to what's going on. So
Headings menu, links menu.
There we go. So the first one.
Visited link. Blog why content can't be an afterthought. Thought you could get away with tackling your content problem later? Think again. By Drew Deneen. The card component. VoiceOver off. So
there we go. You can hear straight away it's a bit better. You've not got the alt text there. You could also do things like you can hide certain bits of text from a screen reader, but still, you know, retain it visually. And yeah, you may find yourself thinking, oh, well, we can just do something like, let's get rid of the actual saying blog beforehand and put sort of something like ARIA hidden. True. And that'll basically do the same thing. So that'll hide it from a screen reader. And we could do that with the sort of the blog text there. We could do that with descriptions as well, maybe. Always think twice when you find yourself reaching for ARIA hidden, because although it works, it'll take that content out, and that content won't be spoken out to a screen reader at all, no matter if they're looking for links or what. So if we save that and just have a quick look and listen again.
VoiceOver on links menu. Visited link. Why content can't be an afterthought by Drew Deneen. The card component. VoiceOver off.
So again, we've cleared that up a bit more, but we've not done it in a particularly accessible way there because we're hiding text and we don't really want to do that. ARIA hidden's a bit more useful for when you've got stuff that no one should be seeing, basically. So if you've got a menu that's off screen that you don't want to be interacted with, you might use that. Or if you've got duplicate content that you don't want a screen reader to read out twice, that may be a use case for that. So we don't want to do that. So we'll go get rid of that again. Also, I want to have the alt text in this case. So I'm going to put that back in. The main takeaway here is that because we've wrapped it all, that's really what's causing the problems. So we're not going to do that. We're going to get rid of the link that wraps around this card. I'll do that now. This will break all the styling. So I'll hit save and we can see we've broken the styling. So what I'll do is I'll pop the styling onto the host element. So this is basically targeting the host element, which is the card-component element. So we'll change the wrapper link, which we've got rid of, to be that now. So that's now the host element. And when we hover, we want it to be when the host element is hovered for the moment. Oops. There we go. And that should bring us back to where we were. Okay, so it looks the same as it was, but yeah, we've not got a link anywhere at the moment. So what we really should be doing is, to make it simple and easy for everyone to understand, is just linking the primary sort of data, the primary content for this. So that's going to be the card title. It's, you know, short to the point. You should know from that card title what it's going to be linking to. So let's put one in. Is it right? I forget how to type. Right, hit save, and there we go. You can see it's changed its styling slightly. So yeah, if we just have a quick listen.
Voiceover. Links menu.
So
visited link. Why content can't be an afterthought. Visited link. Improve your content quality with publishing schedule. Visited link. Making it easier to manage your content. The card component. Voiceover off.
So there, you've just seen and heard there, we can just now quickly flick through and you get a pretty concise, thing spoken to. You know exactly what those links are about. Unfortunately, I've made it so I can't click anywhere else on the card though. So the only area you can click is actually the text you've now linked. So you can see the little pointers change there. Everywhere else doesn't click. So we need to sort that out. And there are a couple of ways of doing this. A kind of a simpler way and a more, well, a CSS way and a JavaScript way, I should say. Personally, I find the CSS way a bit easier, but that's more my background than anything else. So what you could do is jump over to the actual card component itself and maybe stick, I don't know, a click handler on there, and then get it to do put some code in there. So when you click anywhere, it'll fire off this link. That's the one I'm not going to concentrate on today, but we'll put a link at the end of the webinar so you can read more about that. It's a bit more involved and it does have other areas where you need to take other things into consideration. So it's one thing, it's perfectly valid and it gets around certain other issues, but we're not going to do that today. We're going to concentrate on the CSS sort of fix for this. So we've got this link here. I've got a class that I've prepared for it. So I should sort of styling out. There we go. So it's back to its proper styling. And if we scroll up here and find the inline link. So the important bit here is we're going to use the after pseudo selector. And what this does is it puts a bit of content, in this case, just an empty bit of content, after the actual content of the link. So after the text here. And then we're going to use that to sort of stretch it out so we can click anywhere on this card. So we set it to be position absolute and display block so I can get some height and width on it. And also, you wouldn't normally need to do it, but just for this specific example, because we've got this little blog tag, I've given it a Z index of 1, so it's above all this. But that doesn't really matter. You wouldn't necessarily have to do that. So what we're going to do is stretch the content across the whole of the card. And just to help us actually visualize what's happening, I've just put an extra bit of styling in. So it's going to appear as a pink box. So that you can see it. So this is the content we've placed afterwards. And I've given it a height and a width just so we can see it at the moment. And yeah, it's positioned absolutely, so it's not affecting the layout of anything else. It's floating, it's kind of above it. And yeah, as you can see, if I click over here, if I hover over the text, it's a pointer and it's a link. And as this is part of that link, it's, yeah, you click on that and it'll take you through to wherever you're pointing it to. So let's get rid of the height and width there for a sec. And what you can then do is stretch each corner of this after element to each corner of the card, because we've set the card to be position relative, which means when you set the absolute element inside it, it'll then use that as a reference. So you could put in top 0, which will stretch it to the top, left 0, right 0, bottom 0, and so on. And that would do the trick. But there's a more modern way of doing it using inset, which is a logical block property, basically. So it's for when you, like, if you've got right to left or left to right text, it means you don't have to swap over left and right. It's kind of a more modern way of doing it, and obviously, and it's shorter. I'm only having to do one thing. So by setting inset to 0, getting rid of the height and width there, if I hit save now, cross my fingers, there we go. So each of those little after elements has been stretched across the whole of the card component there. So we're kind of back to where we were, but we've now got the screen reader speaking out the right things. Okay, I'm going to come back to this. I'll just comment this out again. It'll come in use a bit later. Okay, so you can't see it, but yeah, it's still there. It's now all still a link. It's just invisible and on top of it. Okay, next up. So yeah, we spoke about the headings and giving it some more semantic meaning. And yeah, like I said, in this case, I think it's a good idea. In some cases, you may not want to do that, but most cases, you know, as long as you've got enough content in these cards, it's a good thing. So let's see what it does and how a screen reader user can benefit from it. We know this one's an H1 up at the top here. So these need to be H2s to be in the right order. So let's change that over and change the end tag there. There we go. And because I've styled it using the class, it doesn't look any different. But now, if I press F5 and
voiceover on Safari.
And if we go to the headings.
Headings menu.
There we go. Yeah, you can see now we've got more information in there. We've got the blog heading, plus we've got all these level 2 headings. And as a screen reader user, I can flick through these and get an idea of what's on the page. And yeah, maybe I'm interested in the improving your quality content with publishing schedules. So I can now jump straight to that section and expect there to be content there that I can read further. So
heading level 1.
Let's do that.
Visited. Heading level 2. Link. Improve your content.
If I hit enter.
Visited. Heading level 2. Link. Improve your content quality with publishing schedules.
So there we go. We're on that, and I can hit the next button and read the content that relates to this heading. So if I do that.
Publishing schedules and Contensis allow authors to schedule when an entry should. By Richard Saunders.
I'll jump back up. Sorry, I'll jump back up to that title again.
Published, visited, heading level 2.
That is on the title. It's just because of the styling, it shows as being around it. But we're on that title here. But as you probably noticed, You didn't hear anything about the image or the fact that it's the blog. It's because we've got in the source order, the blog and the image come first. And that's, you know, a screen reader user wouldn't necessarily expect that. They'd expect to go to the heading and then read the content beneath it. So we've got the potential for a screen reader user to miss content here, depending on how they navigate. So what we're going to do is turn screen reader off.
Voiceover off.
And we're going to put it into a better order in the actual source code. So get the source code sorted itself. So we've got the heading there. Get rid of those red bits because they always annoy me. And we've put the blog tag and the image after the title now. So hit save. There we go. It's moved up, which is great because now it will be read out in the right order. So it'll go to the title and then it read out a blog. There's an image there with the alt text and so on. But it now doesn't match our design. So we're going to fix that with CSS. Because we're using Flexbox, so we're displaying flex on the card. It means all of these are sort of flex children. And we can change the order of those, just the visible order, which sounds great, but you've got to be careful because you can introduce other accessibility issues when you purely change the visible order of things. It's especially bad or problematic, I should say, for interactive elements. Let's say you've got a list of buttons or something and you change the visible order of them. A screen reader user and someone tabbing through them might get confused because they may jump. So the first one may get focused and then it may jump to the third one and then the fifth and back to the second because we've changed the visible order, but everything else will be going from the source order. So we've made it better, but we need to sort it out. So if I find the image wrapper, so it's the image wrapper here, and it's got the blog and the card in there. And what we're going to do is use the order rule here. So if I get rid of that, every child of a Flexbox container has a default order of 0, and it's just kind of put in there, and it'll come out in the order that the code is written in, like this. If you give something an order of -1, it just promotes it to the top of that. So what we'll do is we'll do that and hit save. And there we're back to where we were. So even though it's visibly looks like that, the source order is still the heading first. And so when I open up voiceover, because the headings again.
Headings men. Visited, heading level 2, visited, heading level 2.
So I'm on that heading level 2 here. When I go to the next element.
Blog. A composite image of the publishing schedules panel in Contensis. Publishing schedules and Contensis are by Richard Saunders. Voiceover off. So
there you get the idea. We've changed the visible order of things, so it still looks like the design, but a screen reader user now has less chance to miss the content when they're navigating by using headings. Right, the third thing we can do to add a bit more information and help a screen reader user is add more meaning to our code. So this is going to be around the wrapping element of the actual list itself. At the moment, it's the I think it's called card list element. So if we have a look, here we go. It's the card list, and that's just, it's a custom element. It has no semantic meaning itself. It's as good as a div, basically. So what we're going to do is help screen reader users out by providing some more information in the form of wrapping it in a list. So we'll wrap that loop in a list. And each card component is going to need to be in its own list item for this. So we'll pop a list item in there. There we go. We'll need to sort the styling out, so I'll just open that up. And instead of the host element being getting this styling, we're just going to make it an ordered list. We've just put down here, we'll have it now. So in theory, I should save this and nothing should change. Good, it all looks the same. But we're now giving more information to the screen reader. Unfortunately, we're not giving more information to the screen reader I'm using here. Using VoiceOver and having a list like this that's not actually styled like a list with bullet points, it doesn't read it out as a list. And I've always thought it was a bug, and it has been raised as a bug. I did some checking before this just to see what the status of that is. And a while ago, yeah, Apple got back to the people who raised it. Apparently it's a feature, but not a bug. And I can kind of see where they're coming from. The reasoning goes that because web developers use an awful lot of lists and style them not like lists, it kind of dilutes the fact that, you know, everything basically is spoken out as a list for quite a lot of elements. And that could be annoying for screen reader users. So I can see why they've done it. In this case, I definitely want this to be read out as a list. So we can do that by doubling up on semantics on here. So if I give that a role of list, you don't need to do that because normally anyway, because an ordered list has an implied role of list, but we're just making it even more listy. I don't know. It doesn't affect anything. It has no downsides. It's just an extra bit of code, but it does fix VoiceOver for, you know, in this situation. So hit save again, and yeah, let's have a listen to what VoiceOver thinks of it now.
VoiceOver on Safari.
Right, so I'll jump into the blog H1
in the card component,
and now the next element I go to should be this list, and you should hear the extra information you're giving to screen reader users.
List 3 items. You are currently on a list inside web content.
Fantastic. So we're getting told we're on a list. We're getting told there's 3 items in the list, and then when I go to the first item,
visited heading level 2 link. Why content can't be an afterthought 1 of 3. You are currently on a heading
off.
VoiceOver off.
So great, we've done all that, and we're being told it's a list. It's got 3 items. When you go to the first one, it says you're on 1 of 3, and so on. When you go to the second one, it's 2 of 3, and you're just providing more hints and making it a bit easier for a screen reader user to understand there. Okay, so next up we've got a bonus. So this isn't necessarily accessibility based, although we will look at the accessibility of it. But now, due to the fact we've not wrapped it in a link, it means we can add an extra link in there if we want to. If we want the author to be a link to the author's bio or something like that, or if we want something else in there, like, I don't know, another link to somewhere else or a button or something, we can now do that. Before, it's invalid HTML to have a link inside a link, so you can't nest links. If you did, the browser would think you've done something wrong and try and fix it for you. And generally, it tries to adjust your code to move it outside so the links aren't nested, and usually that'll break something. But we're not doing that, so we can now pop links in. So let's do that with the author. Okay, great. So that's not blown up anything, but we've still got an issue here because if I click anywhere on here, if I click and drag, you can see that's a link to why content can't be an afterthought. And remember what we did with the after selector and adding that content afterwards. We've superimposed it above all this. So this is the same link because the actual link for Drew Denis is behind this content. So I can't actually click on it. If I click on that, it'll just click on the main article. And yeah, to further emphasize that, if I bring back the styling for that after element and bring back the pink box, you can see that this is behind it. So great, we can get an extra link in there, but it's not ideal because we can't click on it. So I've got a little bit of CSS we can use to fix that. So what we can do, if I get rid of that, yeah, we can give it a position of relative. And in this case, we do need to give it a Z index, but you wouldn't normally. That's just because we've set this to be relative, the actual blog and the image. So that would depend on your own implementation on it. But by doing that, we can then lift it above this after element. So if we hit save there, there we go. We can see, click there, why content can't be an afterthought. And when we click on here, it'll be going through to Drew. Great, or almost great anyway. Only other issue with this, and I'm going to give it a color so we can actually see it a bit clearer. So it's now going to be green. We've not got the biggest click target area for this, which is an accessibility issue in itself. It's easy to sort of miss, especially if you're on a tablet and you use, you got a big finger or something, and you try and click somewhere near it and you click the wrong thing. Also, people who have motor impairments may find it hard to actually be that accurate and could misclick. So if you're doing this sort of thing, remember to make your target area big enough. So we're just going to add a bit of padding on this one. So you can still see it in the green there. We've got a much bigger area. There's less chance of like misclicking and hitting the wrong bit. So yeah, it's something to consider. Also to consider is actually doing it in the first place. Some people don't like having a link and another link because you're basically doubling the amount of times you have to tab through things, which I'll show in a sec. Let me get rid of that styling first. So let's just make it how it should be. Get rid of, there we go, outline, save. So it's still got that area, big hit area, but we have doubled the tab stops basically. So if I want to have a massive great list to tab through, I'd be pressing tab twice per item. Okay, so yeah, this is just a summary of what I've spoken about. So yeah, think about the accessible name and think about the length of the link, and yeah, don't wrap the whole lot. Don't wrap the whole card. Target the sort of primary information. So usually it's going to be the title there. Make it easy and actually give it a go yourself. You can either do it in DevTools or try it in a screen reader and work out, is it easy to actually understand quickly what the link's all about. Once you've done that, use some sort of method, either be it making the whole card clickable with CSS or with some sort of click handler on the wrapper, so you can click everywhere. Use a heading, yeah, if you've got enough content in the card and it warrants a heading, yeah, use it, as long as you've not got a million headings on a page and yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah, consider the source order. And having the heading first, so get your source order correct, especially if you're using headings. A screen reader user is expecting those to sort of have all its content after the heading, so you don't want them to miss anything. And yeah, if you've got a secondary link, make sure it's got a nice big hit area, make it as easy as possible to, for either touch users or people with sort of motor issues to actually hit it. And yeah, finally, yeah, just wrap them. You use semantic elements wherever you can. So wrap it in a list, give, with list items, give that extra bit of information to a screen reader user so they know how many items are in there and they can interact with it in a better way. So thank you everyone for listening. These are the links. So the first one there, the Hayden Pickering inclusive component is really good, but they're all really good to be fair. But Hayden Pickering goes into more detail on adding a click handler and what you've got to watch out for if you do that. So that's quite a useful one. But yeah, I've taken references from all of these in this talk and use these people's sites a lot to help with my own code as well. So they're great reading, and I'll pop those in the Slack channel afterwards. So thank you very much.